Welcome to the Virtual CPA Success Show, where we're 100% focused on helping service-based businesses achieve success. Are you a business owner interested in learning how to scale your business? Has your business reached over $1 million in annual revenue? Then this podcast is for you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's show. I am super excited for today's guest because she has a really fun read about a new personality test that's out there. And the reason I'm excited about it is because Jody and I have worked together for several years. And every time we take one of these, Jody is always convinced that his personality is the highest rated and the best. So that's what I'm going to throw it over to you here first, Sandy, is of the results, which one is the best? And then you can do an introduction to yourself.
That would be mine, of course.
Oh, this is going to be fun. Awesome. Yeah, no, I'm happy to be here, guys. Thanks so much, Jody and Jamie, for having me. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and then we can dive into any questions you guys have. So I've been in marketing and communications for over 25 years. And I like to tell people I kind of have marketing in my blood, right? Because I was the kid when I was young that other kids came to ask, what do I say to get my parents to say yes? Right? Like, I was asking messaging in elementary school, right? So it's just been a passion of mine for a long, long time. I have worked in a variety of industries and different setups for marketing as well, right? So corporate and agency, was an entrepreneur for a while as well, nonprofit, small business. So you name it, I've done it. And it's just been a joy. I love it. So about 4 weeks ago, I joined a company as their executive as a CMO, so the Chief Marketing Officer at Harbourfront Wealth Management. And now this is a company in Canada that's really getting the eye because they are visionaries in that industry. Their whole mission is to transform and shape the future of wealth management. So I signed up for the challenge and I'm ready to go doing that. But why I'm here today is that recently I published a book. And so this book that you mentioned, it took me 9 years to create.
Oh, geez. Painful.
It was a project. Yeah. But it's not that I work slow or anything. It's just that I was doing it on the side of the desk, right? So it's my passion project right from the heart. And it's called Emotional Magnetism, How to Communicate to Ignite Connection in Your Relationships. And, I'm happy to chat about how that all came about and things and that. But really, it was Kelly on your team who had read it. And she said, hey, this is kind of cool. I love it. And let's have Sandy on the show to talk, to your consultants and your agencies about how they can use emotional magnetism with their clients. So that's why I'm here.
No, that's cool. So 9 years, geez. It took me about a year and a half to do my first book. And then my second book, we did it in probably a half year. And I thought that first book was never going to end. I can't even imagine 9 years. You probably put that up, picked it up, put it back down, picked it up. You probably quit it many times, I'm guessing. Tell us through that journey, because writing a book is not easy. And especially the quality of book that you had written, definitely not easy.
Yeah, you're right. It's people, the reaction to the book when it finally got published was quite funny because people all want to write a book, right? Everybody wants to do it. Well, I could say everybody, but most people want to write a book. And Jody, having done it, it's really hard work. It took a long time because, like I said, I was really trying to do it. I was a single mom. I was writing it at night when the kids were asleep. And it took a lot of time to research. So when I say I created it, a lot of that was time researching and figuring out what the heck was going on. And it came out of motivation that, I was really successful in my personal and my professional life, but in my personal life, I felt like a fraud, right? Because I was communicating really well, winning awards, all that. It was all great. But then when I come home at night, I was trying to co-parent with an ex-husband and I couldn't get him to pick the kid up from soccer, right? So I felt like there was a big incongruency there and it was a challenge. And so I started thinking, okay, well, how can I actually communicate more effectively? And so I started researching. So this journey, these 9 years, it's not the normal way that someone writes a book, right? It doesn't usually take that long, but it was my life unfolding. And that's why the book is less of a nonfiction kind of academic book and more of one that's more like a memoir. It's highly entertaining. Well, I'll let you tell me what you think, Jamie, and Jody, but it's very different.
I love the idea that you spoke, you spoke from you. So it wasn't like a scientific book where you're reading and just reading facts, but you brought your own story in there. You talked about your ex-husband and basically the path that went through there, which for me, it was real easy to relate. Not that I've got an ex-husband or ex-wife, but it was more personal. It came from you. And I thought that was a big part of it. That's what I love the most about how easy it was to read and then reread, because I did read it twice, and and that
Awesome.
it was a great read both times.
Thanks, Jody. Thanks, Jody.
This is Jody showing me up. Like, he knew I was going to say I read it once. He's like, no,
Oh,
I have
you,
to tell the whole
Jamie?
audience that I've read it twice. So that's what Jody's doing there.
I read it three times.
Okay. There's no cliff notes yet, so I can't say I cliff noted that. So yeah, let's talk about the 4 motivators that you talked about in the book. I think that's a good starting point, so that way our audience has a good idea of what we're talking about as we kind of go into the nuts and bolts of this book.
Yeah, for sure. So people ask, like, what is emotional magnetism, right? So the name of the book, it's really an easy communication tool that you can use to communicate more effectively in your relationships. And that's not just your relationships at home, but at work as well. So the four magnets, I call them emotional magnets. Let me take you back to how that came
that'd be
about.
great.
So it was about 15 years ago that I became aware of emotional magnetism. And what was happening at the time was I had just launched e-gaming in Canada. We'd never had e-gaming in Canada before. It was a big project. Mm-hmm. I left my 6-figure income paying job, and I decided to spend more time with my children and have more balance in my life. So I opened a business in my bedroom. I guess I should be careful about how I say that. I opened a marketing consultancy in my bedroom. Okay, let's be clear. So anyways, I opened up this consultancy, and then I realized, okay, I said to my kids, let's do an in and out sign. Let's put it on mommy's door, and mommy's open for business, right? And it was all very exciting, like a lot of people doing right now. The trouble was I didn't know how to sell, right? I knew how to market, and I knew how to get the message across and to motivate people to act, but I wasn't a really good salesperson. So I started researching sales techniques, and this is where this path began. So I started looking, and I'm a big fan of, and my idea is that I don't think good ideas die, right? I just think that they're there and they're repurposed and they're evolved, right? So I started digging deeper into like the 50s and the 60s and started looking for sales techniques then that were in, basements of used bookstores and stuff like that. And I came across this emotional appeal theory. And this is something that was developed in the 60s, lots of research behind it. And essentially their thesis is that we are all motivated by one of 4 emotional needs. And that drives all our decisions in life, right? And so not just in your personal life, but your career, your hobbies, every single decision you make. And so this really resonated with me. I still remember reading the book and thinking, had a glass of wine, I'm sitting there, and I devoured this book in like one sitting. And I remember being on fire as I went into client meetings the next day and starting to use this stuff, right? To go, okay, I got to figure out what their emotional magnet is. And it just had my brain on fire. And as a marketer, and those marketers that are listening to this, you need to understand this quickly, because every message that we see, there's an emotional magnet messaging in it, right? Like it's connecting with you. So this all happened. I started using these magnets in my messaging and in my marketing with my clients and in the sales process. And I quickly moved my business from the bedroom, marketing consultancy in the bedroom, to a top 100 fastest growing companies, right, in British Columbia, and an agency of 8, right? So it was proof that this works, right? That when you connect to someone's emotional need, you have an authentic connection with them, they're more motivated to listen to you and to act. So that's how it all kind of came about. The 4 magnets are, I created an acronym to make it easier for people to remember. So it's SAVE, SAVE, and also could save me stress, but basically safety, achievement, value, and experience. And so I like to think of it as like a 4-lane highway, right? And I mentioned this in the book. Like all of us are driving on these 4-lane highways: safety, achievement, value, and experience. And sometimes we'll swerve, right? We'll go from one lane to another. But typically we tend to go and drive in just one lane or maybe 2. And that's what drives our decisions. So I also use an example of like, if you're driving along a road and a highway and you see a billboard and you're just kind of like, yep. And you drive along, you see another one and another one. And then finally one actually grabs your attention. And you pay attention to that message. And the question is, well, why did that message land with you and the others didn't? Maybe you're going too fast, but it's that message that connected with your emotional need, right? It's your magnet. that was activated. And this happens consciously and unconsciously.
So is there, I mean, like with the DISC profile, the way I look at, hey, there's a quick way of self-diagnosing yourself, right? You hop in an elevator, a DISC profile, the D personality is going to be closing the elevator as quick as possible. The C personality is counting the people in the elevator. The S personality is holding the button open for that person who's coming down there. And then the I is talking to everybody. And when you think of that and put it in that type of perspective, you can kind of really quickly determine, oh, that's probably me. It might not be exact, but that's probably where I fall in that. Based on the 4 that you've just mentioned there, is there that easy analysis there? I know you've got a quiz in the book and everything that kind of goes through it and identifies it, but is there an easy analysis that everybody in the audience could say, boom, I'm a safety, or I'm a value, or I'm an achievement?
Yeah, Jody, you know what? The thing is, they could do it just by listening to this podcast, right? So this plays out everywhere in your life. So you've got listeners right now that are like, okay, which one am I? All right, let's play, right? So safety. If you're motivated by safety, then you want to know a bunch of things about this. You want to know, okay, this emotional magnetism stuff, is it easy to learn? Am I gonna pick up these skills really fast? And how much security is this going to give me, right? Is there structure? Is this book organized? Is it an easy read, basically, right? And can I use this with my family, right? How's this going to help me in my life, right? So that's what safety's listening for.
That would not be me, Jamie.
That's you?
Well, Jody, you can't tell people yet, because you and I are gonna guess each other's once she's done walking through these, because that's my favorite part of the book, is where you talk about how you have to listen to try to see what other people's are. And Jody and I have worked with each other enough. After you're done describing them, I want Jody and I to try to guess each other's.
Awesome. So that's safety, and really safety people are looking at structure, schedule. They do not like change. They want boundaries. They want to make sure that things are self-preservation, and their specialized skills. So that's things have to be easy. Okay, achievement listeners out there. So you're trying to figure out, is my magnet achievement? So you're interested in, who the heck is this person talking? What has she done to prove this theory, right? What kind of awards has she won? 9. And how did she take her business from her bedroom to a top 100? Like, that stuff is what you're paying attention to, right? And that's what's motivating you. How can this practice of emotional magnetism help you achieve your goals? Because you're naturally a competitor. You're naturally really wanting that recognition and competition. So that's achievement. And then we've got value, right? So the value people are like, oh, for goodness sake, get to the point already, Sandy, right? I just don't want to waste my time here, right? So it's about maximizing your time and your money, making sure that there's a return on your investment. These people want to know if they're going to spend 45 an hour with us, and they better get a credit from it, or they want to make sure that they get value from this time, right? So, and it's also not just about money and time. It's also about the fact that, how can they create a legacy, right? How can this help them in their relationships for the future? And also, how can they prevent waste? So there's a bunch in my book about value. And then the last one is experience. So I have an inkling here, but I am motivated by experience. Yep. Experience is really people that are interested in learning new things, right? They're coming onto podcasts, they're coming onto your awesome show to learn how to evolve themselves, to grow their business, to advance into virtual CFO, right? Like, how do they actually use your systems and be better? And these people like change. Like, they just cannot stand monotony. Very creative. And essentially want to have that, what's coming, what's in the future. These are the people that are lining up for the iPhone before it's even open, right? And name their company next. Yeah.
So,
does
that
help?
being said, Jamie.
All right. So my guess for Jody is, because I knew I was going to be on this podcast with him, and so I think there's 2 that are pretty close, but I'm guessing you are over 50% experience, exactly. And then your next would be achievement.
What was your experience? It was like
percent?
65%. Yeah. I have to look at I'd have to go back and look at it, but 65%. Okay. Then it was definitely achievement, and then value and safety way down there. Yeah. Jamie? I think you are experience as well.
What's your guess for me?
I would say experience, and then I'm going to say achievement being number 2 as well.
Actually, safety was number 2 for me. I was surprised with that. But yeah, so I thought achievement, especially there were some things about the achievement where I read, I'm like, oh yeah, that's totally me. But no, somehow safety came up.
Well, you know what?
So yeah, but experience was
wow,
close to 60%.
Yeah. Well, and that makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense to me, even
Yep.
just not meeting you through this experience, right? Like we're having an experience here. I asked you guys, how do you want this to go? And you're like, let's just have some fun here, right? Let's just have a conversation. I'm like, okay, check, experience. But what's amazing is that you can quickly self-assess. Like to your point, Jody, people know what their magnet is, right? The trouble is they don't communicate that to people. So if you start a relationship, even at work, you start a relationship and you find something about them adorable, right? And then over time goes by, you find it annoying, right? Because you're like, this is not what I signed up for. It's because they're motivated by an emotional magnet and you guys haven't chatted about it. An example of that is, it works in the workplace and at home. Like my fiance, he's motivated by safety and value, and I'm experience and achievement. So a Friday rolls around and I want to go to like the restaurant down the block, right? I want to have an experience, right? I've worked really hard all week and he wants to just come in, kick his shoes off and watch Netflix, right? So something's predictable and secure. So we have to compromise, right? And because of that, we eliminate a lot of fights because we know. In the work environment or when you're working with clients, it's really important to figure this out, right? Because really communication is the undercurrent of every relationship, right? And most of us haven't been taught how to communicate effectively. So that was part of my passion behind this project is, I started uncovering more about myself, learning about these, there's 16 communication blockers that we don't even know we're using that breaks our connection with people. I really wanted to make sure people knew that and they could start learning a bit more about how to make true connections with people in their life at work and home.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and again, I think we've taken quite a few of these tests and these analysis, and that's one of the things that it always challenges you to do is try to figure out the people you're working with. And I'd say yours has given the best path. Your book has given the best path to figure that out. So as I was reading it, I was like, okay, what is my wife? That was easy. What is Adam, the other co-founder of Summit? I know exactly who he is. Or what is Kelly? Like I was able to go through people and identify them. And then I started thinking through my clients. And I think that's, as a service provider, to be able to do that and say, oh, this person is motivated by this. This is going to make it a lot easier to work through. And I know you went through the example in your book of you're working with a salesperson and how to identify what's going to get them excited. You talked about that in the book. And I think that's really important when it comes to any kind of client service is knowing your customer, knowing who you're working with. And what
100%. Them. I mean, when you think about whether you're in the sales cycle or whether you're in your service, right? And it's really important. You're always asking them, my question is, what does success look like for you, right? Give them an open-ended question and then start listening for those cues and clues, those words that they're using. Are they going to say that it's the timeline, right? This really matters. Or your team dynamic, how you integrate with the team, or the fact that you're going to have excellent reporting, or, in this case, proactive analysis on the balance sheet or anything like that, right? So you start getting these little nuggets, the more you're curious and asking, and most importantly, shut up and listen, right? Listen to that information. And then you're starting to filter, okay, wait a minute, this is where I think we're going. And this is what's important to them and what they emotionally need for them to feel successful with the project. So, and there's other things you can do too. It's besides the cues and clues in the book. What I used to do is I would take a list of things that were the 4 emotional magnets. And I'd say to my client, on this list, identify them in order of priority. And immediately I could tell the magnet.
Oh, that's a great idea.
So there's little things you can do like that, right? That really help you understand who you're dealing with.
Yeah, you could probably do that right in the onboarding process to get a good idea.
Yeah. And Jody, even in the hiring process, right? I was listening to the podcast you guys did about culture and hiring.
Are you the one listening to that
nowadays?
You wonder.
Oh, it's me.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I love your podcasts. They're great. So I think, even in the hiring process, when you're hiring someone or even trying to engage them in the organization, everybody's individual and they all have their magnets. So I had a team member that was motivated by achievement. I'm like, okay, her promotion was critical. Her title was critical. Her office was critical. These were important things to keep her motivated in the business. Where I had another team member motivated by value. She wanted to know that I actually valued her contribution to the business, that we were creating a legacy together, that she was getting compensated for her value. All these things matter. And safety, it was like, I'm only working this hour to this hour. I want to spend time with my family. I want processes. I want templates. I want structure. So it really does matter, in every.
And I think what a lot of people go wrong is that they think that because they're that way, that everybody shares that same value. everybody has that same emotional magnetism. Everybody's a value person because I'm a value person. So everybody's got to be a value person, or I'm an experienced person. So everybody, it has to be an experienced person. I think that's where a lot of people go wrong in relationships at work, whether it's in person. The psychologist that I am today, would I be right on that?
Yeah, it's true, right? Like lots of people, we just think we're the most important person, right? We just think we're the most fascinating person, when really what we need to do is shift. We need to shift to think about not what you're going to do for them, but what they actually need you to do, right? And that's a big shift. And it's not just words. It really makes a difference when you start, like I say in my book, become a detective, right? Try and figure this out. Be curious. Like, what is it that these people truly need to be successful from you? And then start making sure that that's a priority, right? And in your communication, in your deliverables, and you'll know. Like, it's just like if you're gonna go buy a car, and you want to buy a car, and you say to the salesperson, "Here's what I want. I want a nice car. I want excellent new features, and I want it to be a pretty color," right? I'm just saying that. That's not what I would actually say, but just for examples. And then that's the blonde in there, right? And then but then the person starts selling you on those things, but it's not connecting, right? It's not connecting because it's not getting to what I actually need. And what I need is I need the car to have a really cool experience. I need to feel that this car encapsulates my achievements, right? So the brand is important, right? For me, because I'm motivated by achievement and experience. And then also, I need to know that it's got all those like self-driving things, right? Like, make my experience even more fun in the car. So I ended up with a Ford that self-parks, and my kids refer to it as Mummy's magic car, right? So those are the things. Like, once you focus on shift from what they say they want to truly what they emotionally need, their emotional magnet, and you'll be able to connect way more.
So I guess if you were to take this even one step further and say that, hey, if I'm so we have company retreats all the time, right? We have them twice a year, and we develop these really cool agendas and all that kind of stuff. Would you say that the proper way of doing that would be to in some way incorporate each one of those 4 emotional magnets inside the agenda, not having it one way versus another, but having them, making sure that you're touching base on all 4 of them in some manner?
Yeah, Jody, great question. Absolutely, right? So I've got a practice now where if I'm creating marketing messaging, or I'm doing a campaign, or I'm going to write a letter, or I'm going to do an event, I write SAVE. And then I write, what are we doing to meet each of these needs, right? So to have a balanced, successful event, you need to have all 4 considered, and you have to deliver content on all of those. That comes down to your speakers on stage. I'm usually hired because I have high energy, I have funny stories, and it's relevant, right? People can relate to that. But there's other people in the audience that want quick skills, right? They want to, achievement, they want to know who the person is, right? The credibility of that person. Value, they want to get something fun and quick out of the way, right? They want to have something that's going to actually be something they can take with them, maybe a sheet or maybe a tangible piece, right? They can take away with them. And then you've got experience is pretty obvious, but then you've got safety. Don't ask these people to stand up in the room and do something, right? They're not comfortable in that, right? So a lot of speakers make that mistake where they assume everybody stand up, everybody do this, or pull them up on the stage. You've got to play to the 4 emotional magnets to have the best effect.
It's interesting, Jody. How many times have you and Adam had the argument with me in the room where you want to make our retreats as fun as possible and everybody's going out to the bar, and Adam's like, but we need to make sure we talk about the newest accounting principle out there. How many times have we had that argument in the 7 years I've been working here?
Yeah, and I've won every one of them.
Our retreats are really fun.
That's the achievement part of me.
But that's the thing, right? Like, making sure for the people that they want to actually learn, they want to get value out of it. So what you value and what other people value are different, clearly, right? There's 4 different emotional magnets. Absolutely.
And so it's important to incorporate all 4 of those in really everything you do is what I'm hearing from what you're saying. So
yeah. And then also, Jody, I was just going to say that, like, when you leave this, your listeners stop this podcast and you guys leave this, you're going to see messages throughout your day. And now, sorry, but not sorry, you're going to see the 4
I'm hating you right now.
Right?
It's like, gosh dang it. Sandy. It's like that song. Get it out of my head. No, that's great. So kind of switching gears from employees to clients. How can, if I've got a stakeholder, I'm in the marketing agency or whatever, a stakeholder, what's the best approach with those folks? Do I obviously identify? I try to identify quickly, and hopefully I can and can't. And then from there, what do I do? Do I have to be fake because that's not me, or what's I guess what's the approach?
Yeah, I mean, what I'd recommend there is the first piece is uncovering it, right? Trying to figure out what their emotional magnet is. And we've talked about that. And then the next piece is honoring it, right? And delivering on it. And that's where people fall apart, right? So essentially, it's one thing to get the sale. It's another to actually provide great service, right? And have that people refer you. So what you need to do is be mindful of, so if their emotional magnet is value, then you need to demonstrate that continually through the project, right? If someone's motivated by safety, then you better have things prepared, structured, scheduled, all those things, and staying proactive in your communication with them, right? And depending on the project that you're doing, right? So it's really important that it's always at the top of your mind throughout the entire life cycle with your clients. And then also, you've got to remember that if you are in the sales process with clients, they are looking at other people and comparing you, right? And at the end of the day, we work with people we like, right? People that are like us. So that connection has to happen at the beginning, and you maintain that in an authentic and a transparent way. I mean, you have to have integrity here, right? This isn't about manipulation. This is about making sure that you have honored what they need and you're delivering it.
Yeah, great point.
So yeah, another thing I think you're very talented at is telling the stories, and so I'd love for what
or Sandy.
No, Sandy here.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'd love for you to give an example of what you just talked about and how you've done that. Obviously, you're in client service, so I'd love to have a real life example from what you've been doing.
Yeah, sure. So there's times where, I could do it from my agency as well. It might be more applicable here. So trying to get a sale, right? So even in, let's say you're doing an RFP. Now, RFPs are pretty dry, right? But how do you stand apart in a structured environment like that so that you actually rise to the top of the pile in the criteria?
Because you don't know the magnet that person that's reading has.
No, you don't, right? And so what you have to do, back to your previous point, Jody, is you have to make sure all four are in there, right? And so you can do it. So if you're thinking from just an RFP, for example, right? From a safety standpoint, you better follow their criteria, right? That's what they're marking you on, right? Is making sure that you're checking all those boxes and everything is done to their standards. If it's achievement, well, then they really want to know what your accolades are. You have a page specially done. You have testimonial, social proof in there from customers that identify your credibility. We know how far that can go, right? And then value, when you're looking at costs, they don't flip to the back. What I did differently with my clients is I had it on the second page.
Okay.
Very, very different from what people do, because I want to make sure that they understand I don't have anything hidden here. There's no agenda other than I'm going to share the facts here, and then I'm going to break them down in detail in this document. So second page, I was like, here's what you're signing up for. This is what the options are. Provide them options so they don't feel cornered, and then essentially have that backup information. And then experience is really the whole packaging. And from a marketing standpoint, what can you do to really package that up to make it look good? I see so many documentations that just have lost the opportunity to brand it successfully. Not just sexy graphics, right? To actually make that an experience when someone opens it. So these are all the things that you can take into consideration in that process.
Yeah. Then on the follow-up, so let's say that we're kind of taking it through the journey of the sales process here. So the RFP, the follow-up, you still don't know that person. You still don't know where they're at and within the four. What's your cue? So you're on that conversation with them, and they're asking you about the RFP.
Yeah. So you, in the conversation that you have with them, if you don't know by this point, then you have specific questions you're asking to pull that out, right? So in my book, I talk about how you can actually change some of your messages to appeal to a magnet, right? So it can be the same question you're asking, but you change it to appeal to that magnet. So and it's not hard to do. I mean, once you do this a couple times, it becomes second nature. So, for example, if you get an inkling that the person is saying, it's really about the timeline. Like, we have to get this done by this time. It's all about that right now. And I need to make sure that you're going to integrate with my team really well. And there's a good dynamic with my team. Then we're talking about value, and we're talking about experience, right? Those are the kinds of pieces that you're picking up on. So then near the end of that process, you're coming back to them and you're saying in those words, so I just want to make sure you've received value from this process, right? You're actually dropping those words, because words are so powerful, right? They're just so powerful. And then remember what I was saying about being preoccupied. People, you guys are on podcasts like this all the time with guests. Now that I know your experience, you're like, okay, this better be fun. I want to have an entertaining experience. But if you were safety, you'd be like, how's the recording sounding right now? Have we got a good, have we captured good sound? You're thinking about that stuff. If it's value, you're thinking, are the listeners getting value from this? Or what question should I ask next, right? So it's always with us, always. And the power of words, just tweaking them to connect to someone's magnet, it's just remarkable what can happen.
So the safety people are watching this and being like, why does Jamie keep cutting out and disappearing? And it's because my video quality is awful. So
they're concerned. It's okay, everybody. We've got it. Yeah.
So kind of continuing on through that process. So you've gone through it. You've determined that, maybe experience is their main touch point. So you're bringing that up during the conversation. And then I guess it's important at that point, because you're going through you've accepted the offer. They've accepted it, whatever it is, whether it's a client or an employee or whatever. Now you're going through the onboarding process. And I think it's really important at that point to let everybody know on the team what that is, what their main driver is. That would be the next step,
absolutely.
so that they don't have to then identify go through that same process. And so once they're a client, then kind of play on that a little bit. So, if we're meeting with clients on a regular basis, maybe we've got a year-long project, so we're meeting with them weekly or monthly or whatever, what's the, how does the conversation start, with each of the different ones? So if you're a value person versus safety and so forth, how does that conversation, or how should I start that conversation?
Yeah, well, you brought up a really good point that by the time you get to either the end of the sales cycle or you're in service delivery, right, what you're providing, you should have this conversation. From what I understand from your needs, and you don't have to say emotional, because some people get freaked out by that word, but from what I understand from your needs, I'm sensing that this, and this are your priorities. Is that correct? Yeah. So then you get confirmation that those are the most important. That's what you do. With some of my clients, I'm pretty transparent. So I just said, I believe there's 4 emotional magnets. This is what mine are. What are yours? And they'll share it. Like, people can self-assess this right away. So now you've got more of an authentic conversation. It's easier to have conversations going forward. If someone was, like, I have this example with a client. So they're all about value. And so the negotiation on the contract was painful, right? Like, it just was painful, because that's what they're motivated by. And they wanted to make sure that they got right down to the cents that they wanted. And I kind of was able to have empathy for that and not be frustrated by it, because I know that's what they are and what they need. So it kind of clears the frustration that you usually have. And then every client meeting we had, when we went out to have a restaurant or to go somewhere, in the afternoon, I'd be like, well, let's go for dinner. And they're like, let's go for happy hour. And I'd be like, oh, okay, they want to go to happy hour because they get a deal, right? Yeah. So this is the thing, right? Like, it just shows up in every decision, and you'll get clients that will say, okay, just send over here. I'm going to send you the email. That's my approval. Well, they're not value, right? They're basically, let's get going, experience. I want to get going. What's next? That kind of stuff. So you pick up on these things pretty quickly once it acts like a filter for you. And then you just make choices to always connect to that, right? And what it does is it provides this, as I said, a really transparent, authentic connection, and people just get happier because you're accepting them for who they are, right? In your personal life and in professional.
So the worst thing you could do to a person is going against their value, right? So that person that you mentioned that wanted to do happy hour, if you kind of cornered them and talked them into doing the dinner and everything like that, that's probably the wrong thing to do, right? Because you've noticed that.
Yeah, because they're thinking that, oh, okay, wait, how much is this meal going to cost me? How much time do I have to spend here? And instead of just addressing their need, which is, you know what, I'd like to get a deal on the cost of this meal. So that's just one example. But I think it's just, there's 2 things I always say. Don't assume anyone's emotional magnet, right? Never do that, because We don't know. Like everybody knows what they are. And sometimes they're different at work than they are at home, right? So, we put on air sometimes at work. So it depends how honest and authentic that environment is in that culture. But so one thing is never assume it. And second is just ask the questions to discover it and then confirm. So I use a technique called EARS. Acronym EARS. Sounds like I like a lot of acronyms, but these two work for me. So EARS is essentially what you want to do is encourage someone to talk, right? So you're encouraging by giving them body language that's, respectful, you're focused on them, and you're encouraging them by nodding like you're doing right now, right? You're ready for me to continue saying stuff. And then A is for ask, like ask them the question, right? Ask them questions to discover what their magnets are. And then most people stop there. And there's 2 other steps. The third one is reflect. So this is what you can do to really make someone feel heard. And especially in the sales process is you have asked these questions and then you want to take some of that information and you want to reflect it back to the person and say, if I heard you correctly, if I understand your needs correctly, this is what you want. Is that correct? And it gives them a chance to qualify and clarify that comment. And I find 99 times out of 100, they always come back with more information that's helpful. And then the final one is to say, okay, now that I understand your needs and the scope of this project or what we're going to do next week or a month from now or a year from now, I just want to summarize what our action steps are. And so S is summarize. And what happens is you go through the steps. Is everything on the same page? So now you're a team, right? Just in those 4 steps, you've worked through communication, you've identified their needs, you've confirmed that what they need is what you've reflected. And then you summarize collectively together what you're going to do to get there.
So you went through all that yourself. And so let's say you and I know nothing about emotional magnetism at all. And you're trying to get on my level. Isn't that kind of a one-way street? Are you now sacrificing what feeds you emotionally if you're pushing my values and you're coming to my values if I'm a value person?
No, I don't think so, because what you're doing is like, the way I present myself is just the way I am. Look, this is what I need to, you're also hiring them, right? So you're looking at, do I want to have this experience? Like I'm motivated by experience and achievement. Do I want to have this experience? Am I going to actually feel like I'm accomplishing good goals and creating success with these people, right? So you're also thinking about what you need. Never pushing your stuff on a person. Just, it's another way to understand people and then communicate to what they need, right? So it's just, there's just so many times we're having conversations where we're not either listening or we're just not honoring what other people need. And so I think this is really critical. Never push what you want and your agenda on those people, because essentially you're being of service to them, right? And you're just qualifying and clarifying that what they need is you understand and you're delivering it.
And so then you address it in the book, but kind of if you could readdress it. So let's say that you read the book, you love the book, and you want your spouse to read the book and go through that process. How do you get that to happen?
So I get this question all the time, right? Because people are like, "This is amazing, honey, read it," right? So it's, again, you can't push stuff on people, right? They're gonna get there on their own. One of the things I say is just share what you found about yourself, right? So if you become a little bit vulnerable and open yourself up to the people around you at work and at home and share, hey, I read this really cool book, or I did this amazing quiz and I learned stuff about myself. Can I share that with you? They're going to want to learn stuff about themselves as well. It's typically how it goes, unless they're not ready. And if they're not ready, they're not ready, right? So, I have 2 sisters and they read, they don't read nonfiction. I'm a nonfiction junkie. I love reading nonfiction. I love learning, and I love learning stuff I can use right away. But my sisters are readers of fiction and they just want to escape, right? So I'm never going to push nonfiction on them, especially since this is classified as self-help. People go, well, I don't need help. Don't put this on me. But it's not. It's just really about learning about yourself. And the best way to do that is to share with people what you learned, right? To talk about it. And then, like, so many people have come to me afterwards and said, geez, I wish I knew this before, because I've been married for 10 years and I didn't realize that he was value. I just thought he was cheap, So, or I didn't think I just thought she was a workaholic. I didn't know she's achievement, right? So we've already created these labels for people that we work with and live with. And I really, I did a TED talk on this because I really feel like people need to label with care. And we start with these labels, that, oh, they're this way. And then over the time in our relationships at work and at home, we tend to go our own chatter in our head about what those labels are. And they're not necessarily ever positive, right? So we need to be mindful of, what is truly motivating these people in our lives. And if we can just classify them as the 4, it gives you this really cool empathy where you're like, okay, that's just how you show up in the world. And I accept that. It can be annoying at times, but now I accept it. So I'll give you an example, a story of that. I don't think I had this one in the book, but so the other night, I was tired. It was a long week. I came home and I said to my other half, I don't feel like cooking tonight. Do you feel like cooking? He's no. I was like, okay, great experience, right? We're going to order in. So he says, just pull up the app. Let's do Skip. So I pull up the app and I'm looking through our food options. And I said, well, what do you want? He said, you just pick. Go ahead. You know what I like. I was like, okay. So I scanned through, and I don't know if you guys have Freshie down there, but basically it's kind of a healthy. Do you have Freshie there? Okay, great. So basically I'm scanning through and I go, oh, he likes Freshie. So I say, how about Freshie, honey? We'll get those burritos. And he's like, no. And I'm looking at him like he's from Mars, right? Because I know he likes these things. So I'm like, what the heck? And then all of a sudden I get a download and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. His emotional magnet is value. And Freshie is 3 blocks away, right? And so he's like, there's no way I'm going to pay for something that's only 3 blocks away, right? So it diminished a whole opportunity to have a fight. And instead, I just kind of chuckled, gave him a kiss and said, oh, just by the way, honey, just how far does it have to be for me to get delivery to the door, right? He's like, 5 blocks, and we're good. So these are the kinds of conversations that you have. Once you know your magnets, it just opens up this honesty and quite a lot of humor, actually, and acceptance. And, why I wrote the book in its entirety and why it took me, 9 years to do is that I really believe that this is going to help people, and it's going to help people to create more understanding, more love, more acceptance in our world. And we really need that right now. I say to people, I'm creating a love train, right? Because the more people that know their magnets and share them, the more people that, the more connections they make, the more relationships we potentially save, and ultimately the more love we have in the world. So, I invite everybody who's listening, get on the love train, figure out your emotional magnet, share it, and let's help people be more heard and understood.
Oh, sounds great. Love it. Like I said, I read it twice, and it probably won't be the last time. Definitely sharing it with the team, and my spouse is actually starting to read it now. So that's so I talked her into it.
How did you do that? Well, what's her magnet? What do you think? Oh, I guess we shouldn't say that. You're not supposed to.
Yeah, we're not going to assume until she gets through it. But I got a really good idea, but what it is, and it seems like it's not mine. So it's different than mine, and a lot of this it really completely it's kind of unfolding in front of your eyes when you read the book. So great book, Emotional Magnetism. Sandy, last thoughts.
Oh, just, first of all, thank you for having me on here. It's a privilege. And I'm just so happy to be able to share this with more people. Do yourself a favor and understand what you need, right? Any of the listeners, this doesn't only just benefit you personally, it really impacts you in your professional life and dealing with people in work, especially now that we're working remotely as well. It's hard to make connection. And so this is the way to do it. So, there's a quiz on my site. The book's available everywhere. And there's also an audiobook for you multitasker value people out there, right? And I had a lot more fun with the audiobook. I have some funny little quirks in there as well, too. So, no, just a giant thank you to you guys for all you're doing. And the fact that you're on a mission to transform what accounting is like is just so compelling. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Sandy. This has been great. Had a great time. And I hope we get a ton of downloads on this because this has been one of my favorite for sure.
Oh, lovely. Thanks so much, Jody.
Enjoy this podcast? Visit our website at summitcpa.net to get more tips and strategies for achieving business success. We're here to be a resource in this ever-changing industry.